why are you uniquely qualified to talk about this subject in a saturated market of other speakers? Because there are a lot of speakers out there. If we talk about leadership, there are a lot of leadership speakers. It's the number one Googled search for topics, right, for corporate meetings and events. So you have to think about what makes you uniquely qualified. And if you can get a phrase that is synonymous with your name or your brand, or even if it's just on your website, you've made it unbelievably easy for a meeting planner to understand who you are. That will just help the sales process.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Today's guest is Michelle Joyce, founder and president of Michelle Joyce Speakers. Michelle Joyce is a powerhouse in the world of speaker management and personal branding. As the founder of Michelle Joyce Speakers, she has built an organization dedicated to helping thought leaders, authors, and experts share their message with the world. Michelle's company represents some of the most sought-after speakers in the industry, providing them with the tools and opportunities to inspire audiences globally. With years of experience in marketing, event management, and speaker development, Michelle is an expert at amplifying the voices of those who have powerful stories to tell. Her passion for helping speakers grow their influence has not only elevated their careers, but also empowered them to make lasting impacts on the lives of others. Join us as we explore Michelle Joyce's entrepreneurial journey, learn how she has shaped the world of speaker management, and discover the keys to building a successful brand as a speaker. Well, I have the pleasure today of being with Michelle Joyce, founder and president of Michelle Joyce Speakers. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So listen, we love talking to entrepreneurs, and it always fascinates me personally and our listeners as well, kind of that journey, because everybody's different. Although some of them are similar, they're still different. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about what you're doing now with Michelle Joyce Speakers. But can you share with our listeners a little bit about your path on how you got up until that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Ohio, went to college in Ohio, but kind of fell in love with Charlotte, North Carolina when I was in junior in college. So I knew that after I graduated, I wanted to start my life in Charlotte. So when I moved to Charlotte, I landed a position with one of the top keynote speakers and sales trainers and authors in the country at the time. It was just the perfect fit for my degree and what he was looking for. And I ended up running his company, his speaking division, for 17 years. And so not only did I learn the professional speaking business by one of the world's greatest speakers, I also learned sales and customer service by the guru, right? The guy who's teaching everyone. And then, we had grown a significant team, and he was starting to speak less and less. And I became a mom, and I wanted to have a little bit more flexibility. So after 17 years of helping him with his business, 10 years ago, I started my own agency.
Amazing, amazing, and you've been doing that ever since, quite successfully. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. But how we got connected was we had one of your clients, one of the folks you work with, Jay Bear. He was on our episode number 196, which we'll talk a little bit later on. But it was great to connect with you in that manner and find somebody that you were working with that was on our show already. Amazing.
Such a small world.
Yeah. So I've heard you share that you're one of the few people that you know who uses your degree. And I guess I do to some degree also, but not really. Can you share, what is your degree and how do you use it? Because I think especially for our younger listeners, I have two in college right now. I think that a lot of times, and my wife doesn't necessarily use her degree anymore. Sometimes it's hard to understand how that all happens.
Yeah, and, it's funny. I just gave a presentation at my son's school, and I was telling the seniors it's okay to not know. It's okay to just go to college and figure it out. I didn't know what I wanted to do specifically. There were some things that I was drawn to. But in a sort of a fun turn of events, when I was a freshman in college, I had to take a public speaking class. And ironically, the college counselor said, some people take this over the summer. Like, this is not everyone loves to speak in front of large audiences. It's okay if you want to not take it here. But I was all in on college, right? Full
Mhm.
load, the whole 9 yards. And I took Interpersonal Communication 101 by the great Dr. Richard Weaver, who is the head of the department, and it changed my whole path. I loved it. I loved to be able to get on a stage and impact and influence and persuade others and have these wonderful conversations and also learn the art form of speaking. And so I changed my major to interpersonal communication, and then I minored in marketing because I think a lot of the times that goes hand in hand. And I have a really good colleague in the industry who always jokes with me at every professional, association event we're at. He was like, "You're like the one person in the industry who actually went to school for this," because that's my world, is professional speaking and marketing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I entered college, I thought I was going to be a doctor. Clearly, I'm not. That didn't last very long. As I started, I was more of a numbers guy, and as I started counting the number of years it was going to take me and the amount of money it was going to take me to get that degree, I was like, no, I got to figure something else out. So I get it, and I actually just did a class with a professor, another former podcast guest, Perry Williams, who played for the New York Giants and won two Super Bowl rings. He teaches a class at a local college here, and I go in twice a year and speak to his classes. And a lot of people are concerned about that, not knowing and kind of figuring it out. And that's where that life experience comes in, so helpful. And had you not gone for that class, what direction were you heading in? Where do you think you would have ended up?
So my second choice was always elementary education. I come from a long lineage of teachers, and I love children and I love to teach. I'm a teacher at heart. And so that's kind of what I thought I always could do. But it just put me on a different path. And then I started to learn more about business and things like that. And I was like, this is my path.
Yeah, well, you still would have had a lot of public speaking practice as a elementary school teacher too, right?
That's true.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm so fascinated with the entrepreneurial journey. And can you talk a little bit? Because I think a lot of people start out, in a role that they're trying to figure out, like we're talking about, what they're going to do in their career. And, many of us, we have to learn somewhere. A lot of us don't just come out of college and start our entrepreneurial journey. Some do, some start early in high school, but a lot of people kind of figure that out later in life. Why did you go about, and what was the inflection point for you in saying, hey, I love this. I love what I'm doing. Now it's really time for me to do this for myself. I know you had a couple of life things going on there you mentioned earlier, but what was that really driving desire for you?
Yeah, I think the place I was in my life was probably the biggest driver at the time. I had worked for Jeffrey Gitomer for 17 years, and it was the greatest experience. And as businesses do, they start to change and evolve. And he wasn't speaking as much as he was when I first started. And we had an incredible team, so I felt like, okay, if I left, I know he's in good hands. That was very important to me. And I think a lot of it was just my lifestyle at the time, right? Like, I wanted to be kind of in charge of my own destiny, if you will. I didn't want to have to worry about letting people down if my kids had a doctor's appointment. And I wanted the freedom to be able to explore what I was really passionate about, and kind of utilize everything that I had learned over the past couple of decades. And it was really cool. When I first started, I remember thinking, I get to start a business and do whatever I love,
All right.
right? Because when I started my company almost 10 years ago, it was equal parts speaker coaching, speaker consulting, and speaker management. And I loved all of those things. I'm such a speaker coach at heart. I love to help people with their business. And then I had done the speaker management for so long. And I was out to dinner with a good friend when I first launched, and she said, "I predict that one of those buckets is going to take over." And at the time, I remember thinking, "It's my business, Terry. I can do whatever I want," you know? And it's kind of, and she's like, "No, no, no. I mean it in a good way. I think one of those is going to take over." And it was probably a year later where I realized that I wanted to go all in on speaker management. Not that I didn't love the other two, it just made more sense for me to kind of focus and do that.
Right. So basically you had a kind of a need, a necessity. You really wanted to have more time and freedom, so it allowed you to do that, and then it also allowed you to really hone your skill and narrow down where your niche was, or your major focus, like I think any good entrepreneur does, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to know too that, I'd worked in the industry for so many years, and within that role had sort of created my own brand and reputation, and I'd put in the reps and had created all these relationships. And so if you can maneuver it that way, right? Like if you can create sort of your personal brand working for in the industry, and then when you go out it makes it a little bit easier. But for me it was really, I wanted just to be able to be there for my family more. I
Yeah.
was My
Yeah.
kids were little at the time, and that was very important to me.
You're preaching to the choir. I did the same thing. I kept my firm on the smaller side for many, many years because the kids being at home wanted to be able to go to their practices, their events, etc. And now that they're out of the house and I have a lot more free time, now has been a time for us to focus on that growth aspect. So
Yeah.
I get it 1,000%. For those listeners that may be wondering, what all speaker management is, which is the area that you've kind of chosen to focus in on. Can you kind of give us a view of what that means, what that looks like, and what that's about?
Sure, absolutely. So I own an exclusive speaker management agency. And essentially, what that means is we have 12 speakers on our roster, and my team and I manage their professional speaking business. So any direct lead that comes to them, any lead that comes through a bureau, anything that we're generating for them, we are nurturing those leads, closing those deals, staying in front of their customers. We are essentially their sales agent. And that's, we tend to work with people who are pretty well known in this space already. So we don't work with like up and coming newer speakers. These are people who have established businesses. They're Hall of Fame speakers, New York Times bestselling authors, and they are not the best people to be like answering an email, right? Like
Right.
they're on the road speaking and writing books and preparing new content, and they need that support. They need someone to sort of jump on it and figure out the best place for them to speak next.
Imagine a relationship where financial conversations don't feel stressful, but actually bring you joy. We've designed a guide to help you have positive, meaningful money conversations with your partner. This isn't just another budgeting tool, it's a roadmap for building trust and connection. So if you're ready to start a joyful money journey with your partner, go to mitlin.us/couplesjoy and download your free guide. Transform your financial future together starting today. Amazing. So you're managing all that. So your real niche is for those that have kind of this following already, for like you said, New York Times best-selling authors already have a repertoire of speaking as well. And it sounds like, so you also keep your roster size slim, it sounds like,
Yeah.
or maybe slim's not the right word, but to 12 people that you basically do this management for, right?
That's right. I've never wanted to be big. I've always loved the sort of boutique feel where my industry partners know exactly who's on my roster. They don't have to get out a catalog and flip through and think
Right.
about, the 40 people I have. And we're also very exclusive, because of my background in the business and because of my personal brand and my reputation. Those are coveted spots. We don't just give them to anybody. And so I've always like to keep it sort of intimate. And I always tell people when they come on my roster, they become family.
Right.
We treat everyone like family.
Sounds like our firm, Mitlin Financial. We keep the folks that we work with, the families we serve. One of our core values is client equals family equals team. So we're all one big family. So I get that. It also, I guess, also eliminates kind of concerns over having possibly two people in competing or similar industries where you might only be able to help them half the time because you've got to split the situation between those two speakers. You could pretty much identify one in almost every, in their own category or their own vertical, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first started out, I was very particular about not having people that had similar topics. But because we're managing their direct incoming, like I'm not taking a lead for Jay and giving it to
Mhm.
someone else. I'm managing it for Jay. A few years into my business, I took it to my speakers and I said, well, what if we brought on some speakers there was some synergy, right? And you guys could collaborate and you could have the
Mhm.
same topics. And that honestly was a game changer. I had been so protective of making sure that everyone was in their own vertical. As an entrepreneur, you live and you learn and you just hope for the best lessons, right? But when I did that, it created more of a sense of collaboration. And then it also created a better sense of opportunity for us. If a
Mhm.
direct lead did come to one of our speakers and they weren't available on the date, then I had another roster of people I could say, well, how about these two people? Because they, speak on a similar topic and we'll get the other speaker next year.
Right.
And so it created a better business opportunity as well.
Great point. And when you're working with people at this level, right, it also benefits them from kind of knowing each other and seeing what they're doing and learning from each other because they don't have to worry about, well, does this person really do what they say that
Yeah.
what level they're at, and there's a significant amount of learn sharing going on between the group too, I would imagine.
That's right. It's like we've actually created a little mastermind,
Yeah.
with our roster. And my team and I this past year started quarterly office hours where we get everyone together. And that's essentially what we do. We're talking about new topics and concerns and challenges and holding each other accountable. And I was telling someone the other day, it's really interesting. The camaraderie and the sense of family among my speakers on my roster was this really amazing byproduct that I never saw coming. Because I knew all of them. They all had a connection to me. But when we started creating these opportunities for them to share and collaborate, now they call each other when they're in their towns and they're, calling each other on the weekends going, hey, I have a quick question. And it's just become this really awesome sense of community.
Yeah, sounds like it started from the top down, in my opinion. Sounds like you
Thank you.
fostered it. That's great. So what topics have you seen recently that really remain hot that, people and audiences are clamoring for?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I always tell speakers that the professional speaking industry is the long game. If you really want to be successful as a professional speaker, you have to look at it as a long game, kind of like the stock market, right? Like you have to get that return by hanging in there and making really good choices consistently over time. So I would say that evergreen topics, like top of the funnel, high level stuff like leadership, sales, customer service, those are always going to be important to business. Those are always going to be relevant. Sometimes our industry will get hit with hot topics and trends and buzzwords, and we might capitalize on those, right? That's a great opportunity, but you also want to be careful that you're not going all in on a buzzword when your more important topic, right, is leadership. You want to be known for that topic. But when the industry says, okay, everyone needs resilience, I would encourage a speaker to go, well, okay, what does that look like through your lens? You don't need to change your topic to resilience, but what does it look like to be a resilient leader?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, you don't want to, craft this engagement, right? And only use it once
Yeah.
or twice. You want to create it, learn it, craft it, and really get amazing at it so that you can deliver it again and again and again, rather than taking advantage of those, hot topics, if you will.
That's right. They're trendy. They're always going to be trending. There's always going to be buzzwords that come in and enter. So, just stay true to who you are and think about what content is relevant to your clients. And if you can do that, you'll always win.
Yeah, and I mean, have you seen, your engagements, topics, etcetera, over the last 10 years or so that you've been doing this? Have you seen that evolve and change over that period of time? Or like you said, those tried and true, those have been kind of consistent and constant the whole time?
Yeah, well, I think the industry as a whole is constantly evolving. So it's one thing to talk about evergreen topics and content, but listen, COVID came out of nowhere.
Right,
Good Lord, I was like, I have a live events company and now
right,
everything's virtual. And I got to tell you, I, w- I always say, I work with great humans. And so in order to be on my roster, you got to be a great human before you're a great speaker. And all of those people rallied and said, "Michelle, we've been doing virtual presentations since before COVID. Like we've got you, we've got you, we've got this." And it ended up being one of the best revenue years we ever had. People just rose to the occasion and created new and better ways to deliver their content, oftentimes more than once a day, which you can't do when
right.
with commercial airlines. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
can't do a 3-city tour in one day, that's for sure.
Right. So the industry is evolving in ways we've never seen before because of that, because everyone adopted virtual as a medium like very quickly. But we're also seeing demands like a bigger push for diversity on stages, more female speakers, more people of color, younger speakers, right? Like diversity comes in all shapes and sizes. I'm seeing more of a push for diversity on stages than diversity as a topic. A couple of years ago, diversity was all the rage, right?
Mhm.
Now it's like they just want people, subject matter experts on stages that don't look the same, don't look that they've had the same people for 20 years. And so I think we'll see a big evolution of that in the industry. Also, the audience experience has evolved. People are creating meeting planners are becoming younger and younger, right? So like a lot of my longtime clients are starting to retire and they're being replaced with a whole new generation of people who are mixing it up. And I think that's really cool. They're looking at alternative venues. They're looking at more interactions. We can all thank TED Talks for making short talks, right? So I
Mhm.
think we'll start to see things like that that will just evolve the space and, kind of creates a home for anyone and everyone in the business.
Do you think that, like the virtual, that shift to virtual that you had to take during, COVID times when people weren't traveling, is that something that's sticking around and you think will continue to stick around, or as we get further and further away from that, it'll start continue to wind down and become less and less, over time?
What we are seeing is that it's a great supplement to the live event. And I think that's a really interesting opportunity. I can upsell additional webinars or virtual programs or virtual coaching or something like that. And people, it's easier for them to understand the deliverable on that,
Right.
right? It used to just be
Now, yes, right.
yeah, it used to just be a 60-minute keynote in Vegas and then they're on a plane. But I think it will stick around, but I don't think it will stick around as a replacement for live events. Live events are back in full force. You cannot exchange that experience for anything. But we are seeing some supplemental stuff virtually that I think can be really cool.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea too, because especially if you felt connected with that speaker, then it just doesn't have to end there. There are other things that can happen subsequent to that live event, which is great.
Reinforcement.
So I know you don't work with new speakers, right? You're more established, but as an entrepreneur, I'm sure a lot of them. I run into a lot of people after I wrote my book. Hey, I'm really interested in writing a book, and they see me speak. Hey, I'm really interested in speaking, and I'm sure they do. And it's overwhelming. It's something that you really have to put a lot of time, effort, and energy to get good at, and rightfully so. I think anything you want to be good at, you got to put that time, effort, and energy in. But what would you say to somebody? What advice would you give to somebody who was thinking about it, interested in, getting, refining that skill set for themselves and going down that path of being a speaker?
Yeah, I think the most important piece of advice is to put in the reps. because you really have to hone your craft. You have to practice. You have to there's an old adage in the business that says speak more to speak more. And truer words have never been spoken. If you want more opportunities to get on paid stages or those big keynote stages, you really have to put in the reps first. If you're just starting out, just look for any opportunity. Be less concerned about, are you getting your full fee at that time? Be less concerned about that and more concerned about exposure and practice. Because, it's one thing to practice in front of your bathroom mirror, and it's another thing to practice in front of 500 people. Like, wow, I thought that story would land better, or I need to pause there. All those things are so important. And then I would tell them that if they're going to invest any money in their company, it needs to be on a great demo video and a great website, because most speakers are booked by committee these days. And so if someone else has a great website and a great demo and you're up against them, chances are that person is going to look more polished and established and more credible. And so have the right assets in place before you really invest a lot of money in marketing and things like that. You got to have those assets in place.
Okay, so you got to practice a lot.
Yeah,
Maybe you don't get paid, maybe you get paid a little bit, but practice no matter what, and really invest in that website and that demo reel, because that's going to be a way to kind of separate yourself from the rest, if you
that's
will.
right.
Yeah, great
Absolutely.
advice. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, Jay Bear, the customer experience guy, was the guest on my episode 196, and me personally, I've taken on the name of the joy guy. Mitlin Money Mindset. We're all about joy. Why do you think it's so important for speakers to drill down to who they are and what they speak about? To the point where they become synonymous with a phrase or a word like Jay and myself. Why is that so vital?
That is such a great question and such an important topic for speakers. You really need to think about what makes you unique. Why are you uniquely qualified to talk about this subject in a saturated market of other speakers? Because there are a lot of speakers out there. If we talk about leadership, there are a lot of leadership speakers. It's the number one Googled search for topics, right? From corporate meetings and events. So you have to think about what makes you uniquely qualified. And if you can get a phrase that is synonymous with your name or your brand, or even if it's just on your website, you've made it unbelievably easy for a meeting planner to understand who you are. That will just help the sales process. It will go so much faster. We always talk about our meeting planner clients. It's one of the most stressful jobs. Oftentimes, they're looking at your website at 2 o'clock in the morning on the road at another event because they have another event coming up, and it just make it easy for them. Make it easy to do business with them. So if you can be known for something, you'll stay top of mind, and it will just be a heck of a lot easier for someone to understand what you do.
Yeah, and hope that you get that one phrase or one word moniker along the way, right?
Right. Sometimes the market will tell you what you are.
Right. This is true. So, for those who, let's say, they've kind of put the practice in, they've done the no fee, reduced fee speaking, they've really put the time, effort, and energy. They're working on that, reel that you mentioned and their website to have, put their best foot forward. At what point in the iteration of that speaker is it time for them to say, hey, I need somebody, or I should think about hiring somebody to represent me? At what point does that come into play? And do you make that shift from like maybe handling it all yourself to now, having somebody like you and Michelle Joyce Speakers handling their speaking engagements?
Yeah, I think when you're out there speaking and you don't have time to immediately respond to leads or referrals or questions from clients, when that seems very overwhelming, I think that's time to get some help. I think that's sort of like the biggest sort of aha moment for people is I can't answer these 30 emails because I have to catch a plane and get to my next event. But I will say that that's exclusive speaker management isn't always the first step or the best step. For 17 years, I was a direct employee of a speaker because that worked for his company. That's what he needed. Some people appreciate the speaker management because it's sort of, it's a little bit more of a contract employee, or they want to join a team and it fits specific needs. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is to find the one that fits best with you. Because we all do very different things. Like, it's not one size fits all. My team is very focused on sales because that's my background. So, sales and relationships, that's what we do. We don't do logistics. We don't book travel or book calls or stuff like that. All of my speakers have executive assistants that do that for them. There are other speaker management agencies that are full service. They'll book travel and calls and all sorts of stuff like that. So, you really have to find what works best for you and your business. And sometimes when you're starting out, that might be a part-time admin. And that's okay
Right.
because, you can train that person to do exactly what your business requires.
Right. But what I'm hearing, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, is you really have to have those things that we talked about in terms of, getting started out. But it also sounds like you have to be at a point where you're proactively getting inquiries from people that they're interested or want to engage to learn more because they want to think about booking you, right? You have to have some proactive inquiries in order to even think about going to these next steps that we're mentioning.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception or a myth of I'm going to join a speaker management agency and I'm going to get 100 gigs next year. um, Speaker management agencies exist for the people that are so in demand that they need help with that, vertical of their business. If you're looking for someone to cold call or get you on stages, that's not what a speaker management agency does. But, there are people that, to me, that's called a business development manager, right? And I think you
Right.
would be better suited hiring someone to put in those reps for you. But a lot of times, if you're out there honing your craft and doing good work, it will happen organically. Audience members talk, meeting planners talk. It's really important to stay top of mind. So you want to be consistent in your marketing efforts. But yeah, I would just advise people to think about what would be best suited for their business.
Yeah, great advice. And we talked about it earlier. I am the joy guy, and we're all about joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset. So, Michelle, we ask each of our guests the same final question, and that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
I love that question. I always wake up with my children first thing in the morning and get them on their way before I ever start my day. So we hit the ground running at 6 o'clock. They're out of the door by 7. But being able to be here and not be rushed and spend quality time with them in the morning, I think really gives me the mindset of like, hey, this is why I'm doing it in the first
Mhm.
place. So it's a
Yeah,
good reminder every morning that this is my purpose. And then usually when once they're out the door on the way to school is when I have my first cup of coffee and I sit down and I prioritize my day. So I think
awesome.
those two things, they bring me joy. They are visual reminders of why I'm doing it. And then to get in the right mindset, I have to really prioritize what takes priority today.
Yeah, amazing. I've shared on the show before. I miss it these days, but I used to love driving my kids to school in the morning and that, 10-minute ride, just having their attention for those 10 minutes and having those conversations. I miss them, but they were great. I enjoyed them. So enjoy every minute because as you already know, it goes like that.
Too
Crazy.
fast.
Yeah, way
So
too fast.
fast. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, learn more about Michelle Joyce speakers, etc., maybe they're even interested and they're a booking agent looking for one of your speakers, right? What's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, super easy. My website is my name, michellejoyce.com, and you can find everything about us and me and ways to contact us there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing your story with our listeners. I appreciate it greatly and enjoy the day.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank Michelle Joyce for being a guest on the Mitlin Money Mindset. Michelle is an expert in marketing, event management, and speaker development. You can hear and see her passion in everything that she does. Michelle understands how to help people amplify and share their stories, ultimately growing their influence, elevating their careers, and impacting the lives of countless others. Michelle Joyce and Michelle Joyce Speakers can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.